and it's a very happy day that I just place on records a warm welcome, which we like to extend to Professor Dr. Amita Vikram Dwivedi, Head of the Department of Linguistics, Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, Jammu and Kashmir. We are very honored to have you, sir, as a resource person. Thanks for sparing us your time and ensuring that you be with us today for the session. And I hope that the participants will definitely have a different session today, a different new perspective. So for the last 3 days, we had three different perspectives analyzed in the English language teaching and learning process. So today we are going to have another new perspective. So I extend my warm greetings to you, sir, again, and I would like to welcome all the participants for the day 4. Now I hand over the session to the day coordinator, Professor Misbah. Over to you, Misbah.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to have you all on this occasion. And our chief guest today, Professor Amita Vikram, he is the Faculty of Linguistics in the University of Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, and he is also heading the School of Languages and Literature. His research interests include language documentation, writing, descriptive grammars, and the prevention of rare and endangered languages in South Asia. And his works are featured in the National Digital Library of India. About 19 of his lectures are kept in the public domain. Also, his works are categorized under UNESCO's Atlas, and his works Danger the First on World Languages in Danger on the Badavari language at its official website. His published books is found in the libraries of University of Stanford as well as in Princeton. He has contributed numerous papers to many Science Citation Index and Scopus journals, and he has also contributed about 150 research chapters to knowledge resources, chiefly IBESCO and to encyclopedias, and he has also published papers in Springer Nature, Sage, Roman, and Leadfield, and ABC CLIO publications. He has also been a co-director for a research project entitled A Comprehensive Study of Culture, Philosophy, Literature and Language. It is sectioned by Indian Council of Social Science and Research. And his most recent books includes A Grammar of Sarasi, Doggery and its Dialects, A Grammar of Hadoti, and A Grammar of Badwadi, and Something Lurks, It Seems. It was a recent publication done in 2017. And as a poet, he has published numerous poems in different anthologies, journals, magazines worldwide. Until recently, his poems Mother has been published as a prologue to Motherhood and War in an international perspective, published by Palgrave Macmillan Press. So it is a great honor to have such an eminent personality amidst here. And I welcome you, sir. And I hope the participants will enjoy as well as gain the knowledge as you have get in this language as how look at text and about textuality and the discourse of a literary work. Thank you, sir. And I hand over the session to you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Misbah, and I also thank the HOD of your department and all the participants who are joining the session. So, as you already know, that I'll be discussing on the topic titled Text, Textuality, and Discourse. And in order to make my presentation more lucid, I'm sharing the window, the slide with you, so that you'll be able to see the slide. And I hope now you are able to see the slide. And here it's the title, Text, Textuality, and Discourse. So we will discuss in detail each and everything that is related to text, textuality, and discourse. We will discuss issues related to linguistics as well as literature. And when it comes to text and when it comes to textuality, we need to understand that text is an ambiguous word. Now, when we say a text or any word ambiguous, that means we are referring to a fact that a particular word has more than one meaning. So we try to find out what is the meaning of text. One text that we use in our class, we have a reference text or we have a primary text. So that is one meaning. And if you pick a standard dictionary, then you will find the meaning of a text is something written or printed work in terms of content rather than physical form. Now, this information is also important because here the focus is on the quality and not the quantity. So here content is emphasized than the physical form. So it's not the case that the physical form makes a test, but it is the content. And when we talk about the content, then the term textuality comes into being. ITY suffix is important because it has some meaning. And what is the meaning that is associated with this ITY suffix? That is the quality of being something. So textuality is actually quality of being a text. Textuality is something abstract. You can't touch the textuality, but you can perceive through your senses. Once you read a text, then you can find whether that particular text has a textuality or not. Another meaning, when we try to find out of text, and when we go to the etymology, we find that in Latin there is one word like texus, and the meaning of texus is tissue, and tissue is related to fabric. So a fabric is also a text. A sweater that is a woolen sweater that is knitted, that is also a text because it has so many tissues knitted. And another meaning of this texted word is literary style. So, as I said, like anything cannot be a text, and physical form is not important, but the content. So, literary style plays a very important role in order to determine the textuality of the text. Another Latin word texture is also associated with this word text, and here the meaning is woven. So, something that is very well knit, something that is very well woven is uh, is a text. So here the concept of fabric comes into our mind, that in a fabric lots of threads, thousands of threads are there, but all those threads, they are perfectly woven. So that makes a fabric. So similarly, all the words are in the perfect place. That makes a text. Now when it comes to the question that where text is situated, obviously, if a text is not situated in the context, then text is not a text. I give you one example from Noam Chomsky's book Syntactic Structure, published in 1957. And Chomsky says that colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now you'll find uh, uh, this utterance, this sentence, meaningless. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. What does it mean? It doesn't mean because it's not coming into a context. And something is something is green cannot be colorless, and even a color cannot sleep. And even if you sleep, then you can't sleep furiously. So lots of words which are contradictory, self-contradictory to each other. And if this thing comes out of context, then it's not a text. But let's assume that I am teaching meaninglessness in a linguistic class, and then I say that Chomsky states in syntactic structure that colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Then that will make a context that okay, I'm teaching you meaninglessness, and now even something is meaningless, then also it gains meaning. So we need to understand that context plays a very important role in order to determine a text. Now we understand text. When we study text, then we need to understand these three terms because these three terms are used interchangeably: literature, language, and linguistics. Now, what is literature? Literature is a textual form. Textual form in the sense that it has some literary style, and it is woven. It is well knit. But If I ask that what is responsible for literature, then the obvious answer will be language. Without language, there is no literature. When I say language, then I keep into consideration both oral and the written language. Mostly the literature that we read, it is in written language, but we also have oral literature. And in Hinduism, we have this tradition of oral literature as well. So, what is primary? Language is primary. If we remove language from literature, there is no literature. We can say that language is the essence of literature. And for that particular reason, Faninanthi Saussure once said in his book titled A Course in General Linguistics in 1916 that that is spoken is primary, writing secondary. Because first we learn how to speak and then we learn how to write when we join some formal institution like a school, a primary school. So, when it comes to literature, even if we keep our meaning associated with written language, then there is also no harm. But whether it comes to written language or oral language, one thing is for sure that in order to be in order to qualify something to be a literature, it must have literary style and it is well woven. But at the same time, we study literature in our bachelor courses. We also study literature in our master's and PG courses. So we know that literature is an object of study. Because we study literature, we do not simply read literature for pleasure. We read it for greater purpose, for greater interpretation, to get the meaningfulness and to explore more meaningfulness. So language becomes the medium of the text. But at the same time, we also know that language is also an object of study. You can work on English language, you can learn various rules, you can learn like what is the word order of English language, how singular plural they are formed, or how complex compound sentences are formed. So language is also an object of study. And when we study language, then we need one more thing, that is linguistics, and linguistics is known as the meta language. The meaning of meta is beyond. So here the meta language is language used about language, because even if we want to study a language, then we need to explain things in a certain language. So let's say I work on a Dogri language. Dogri is spoken in Jammu area. Then I need to explain things either in English language or Hindi language or in Dogri language itself. So that linguistics, the terminology that are there, that becomes also the meta language. So all these things are interrelated, and they are uh, they are used in this lecture further as well. So here it gives you a brief understanding that how literature, language, and linguistics, they are different, at the same time how they are interrelated. Now, when we say that a literature has a textual form and literature is also an object of study, now we will try to find out how text is woven. It's very simple to say that text is woven, but text has a literary style. But how text is woven is a matter of inquiry. When we try to find out how text is woven, then Faninanthi Saussure's semantic relations, they come into being. What are those semantic relations? These are two semantic relations, and the meaning of semantic is related to meaning. We have a formal subject like semantics in linguistics, and the meaning of semantics is the scientific study of meaning. So that's semantic relations I am talking about. So Saussure says that there are two types of semantic relations. There are two types of relations which are associated with meaning. And what are they? One is syntagmatic and another one is paradigmatic. Now I will try to explain you what is syntagmatic relationship and what is paradigmatic. Now I have taken this sonnet from Shakespeare, and it's a quite popular sonnet, and it says like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day, thou art more lovely and more temperate. There are further lines like, rough wind to shakes the darling buds of May, and summer leaves hath all to shorten that, so and so forth. But I have taken only these two lines, shall I compare thee to a summer's day. Now the relationship between each word is semantic, is syntagmatic. You look at the syntax. Syntax is like how words they come along together and make a meaningful construction. And it is quite a meaningful construction, though you also know that the is an archaic word and now we use you in place of the. So even I can replace and I can say, shall I compare you to a summer's day? There is no problem in that. And at the same time, you know that how do we write English language? We write from left to right. And at the same time, it also makes the horizontal axis. So this is your horizontal axis. This thing occurs on the horizontal axis. So syntagmatic relationship, it is a relationship of association and co-occurrence restriction. Now I can also say I shall compare you to a summer's day. There is no problem in that. But if I need to make a question, though here it is a rhetorical question because Shakespeare is not seeking an answer from the audience and Shakespeare himself provides the answer. So it's a type of a rhetorical question. It's not a question of inquiry. So shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Can be I shall compare you to a summer's day. But even if we want to make a question, then we know that the first word will be either WH or an auxiliary. So here we are using auxiliary shall before I, and then it is a valid question. So a question becomes question because we are using this displacement. We are using this moving that that auxiliary is coming in the first place, and everything is fine. No one can say it's a problem. There is a problem in this type of construction. It can be become a problem. It can become a problematic when I say I shall compare day, the, summer to a. You say, oh, what happened? Like it's not English. Like you can't say you can't put words randomly like this. This is not the way English works. That means these words these words, they are interacting with each other, and how they are interacting with each other, that every word in its place perfectly. There is no problem. So this is syntagmatic relationship. It occurs on horizontal axis, and it's a relationship of association and co-occurrence restriction. So the restriction is that you need to follow the word order of the English language. You can't compromise with that. That is first thing. And each word agrees with the other word. Similar case with the second line, thou art more lovely and more temperate. So you can replace even thou with you. You are, art means are, and thou and art both are the example of an archaic words. So again, you are more lovely and more temperate. There is no problem in that. But I can't say you temperate are lovely more and more. So this is not the way. So that means the interaction, the association should be in the order, and there is also a co-occurrence restriction. And what is that co-occurrence restriction? We know that the basic word order of English is subject, verb, and object. So subject will occur in the first place. So here thou, you is the subject. So you are more lovely and more temperate. This type of relationship is syntagmatic relationship. But at the same time, you have a relationship that is known as paradigmatic relationship. Now, paradigmatic relationship occurs on the vertical axis. Now, what is this relationship paradigmatic? It is the relationship of choice and substitution. So, in place of saying shall, I can make it Americanized, like, will I compare thee to a summer's day? There's no problem. Okay. Don't use shall, use will. Will I compare thee to a summer's day? Oh, because in India, summer is very hot. And even if a lover says this thing to his beloved, then the beloved will take it as an offense that, okay, you are comparing me with that scorching summer heat. So it can be said like, okay, shall I compare the two spring morning, because days are already, as we know that days are hot in India. So again, this choice is also there. I can replace summer with spring. I can replace shall with will. I can replace day with morning. That replacement is always available. And this replacement is not only available with us, but this replacement is already available in the mind of the poet. So that means when the writer is writing these lines, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Writer is taking care of both the relationship, both the semantic relations. And what are they? Syntagmatic as well as the paradigmatic. Consciously or unconsciously, these things are already there in the mind of the writer. Similarly, I can also say you are more beautiful and more calm in place of you are more lovely and more temperate. So again, these type of choices, substitution that I am making, these type of choices and substitutions are the examples of paradigmatic. They occur on the vertical axis. So entire text, when we talk about this word woven, when we talk about this word well knit, like a fabric, then the entire words they are like threads. And once you have textuality, then this entire text is woven on a piece. And then once you read it, it is it is on a page in black and white font, but that constitutes the textuality. So, as I already said, that these semantic relations they occur on two axes. Now, axis here is the plural word. That's why we have used this spelling AXES. And we have already discussed that semantic means related to meaning. Now we will try to find out whether paradigmatic or syntagmatic relations they occur only in literature or whether they occur in colloquial day-to-day language as well. We know that paradigmatic relationship is a relationship of contrast and substitution, and syntagmatic relationship is a relation of combination and co-occurrence restrictions. So when we say a word like cat, sat, and mat, so there are sounds like k, s, m, and because of these three sounds, these words are different. Cat is cat because the first sound is k, sat is sat because the first sound is s, mat is mat because the first sound is m. And there is a difference, and because of this difference, this contrast, we have different meaning. So cat is a four-legged feline animal. Sat is the past tense of sit. Mat is again an object on which we sit. So at sound level, when we use very common words in our day-to-day communication conversation, then also these semantic relations they come into play. At the same time, we need to understand this thing that what is the nature of the English language. Now, in English language, we have only one alphabet, that is Roman alphabet, and in that alphabet, we have 26 letters. And when it comes to sound, there are 44 sounds. But when you try to find out that how many words we have in English language, then you have thousands of words, million words in English language, and you have only 44 sounds, you have only 26 letters, and you have only one alphabet, but you have this possibility of millions of words that are there. How these words they come into being? If you try to find the answer, then the answer is because of this paradigmatic relationship. These words they come into being. So there is like a combination, a co-occurrence restriction. So these two relations they also come into play at word level, at sound level as well. When it comes to stylistic effect, lines of a poem, anyone can write a poem. It's not that difficult, particularly the rhyming poem. So the two lines are: the sun is shining bright. This is a lovely sight. Now, bright and sight, they are the example of end rhyme. And how this end rhyme comes into being? This end rhyme comes into being because of this paradigmatic relationship. Because we cannot say the same thing: the sun is shining bright, it is a lovely bright. You will say, lovely bright? What is lovely bright? So it's lovely sight. So again, there is a contrast and substitution of a word in order to gain the end rhyme. At syntactic level, it also occurs. Like we can say the cat sat on the mat. Now subject, verb, and the adverbial on the mat. But we can replace the cat with the dog, sat with the slept, and mat with the couch. So I can say that the cat slept on the couch. I can say that the dog sat on the couch. The dog sat on the mat. So these type of choices are there, and these are paradigmatic choices. But the relationship between the and cat is syntagmatic, co-occurrence restriction. We can't say cat and the will always follow, sorry, precede cat in this particular relation. So these relationships are not specific to literature only, but these relations are also also there where there is language. Where there is language, irrespective of the fact you are using in literature or in colloquial or in day-to-day communication conversation, then you will find this relationship everywhere. And these relationships, they also responsible for textuality. Now, there is a little philosophy that is also associated, and it is not a philosophy of religion, but it is a philosophy of language, and again from Saussure. Saussure says sign. Saussure gives the concept of sign. Now, sign is a word. You can consider sign as a word, a morphological unit used by Saussure. So you can consider a sign as a word. Any word, whether it is a content word or a functional word, it is a sign. Because in sign you have two things that inherently signifier and signified. Both are psychological entities, but in a sign you will find that. At the same time, Saussure also says one important thing, that everything depends upon relations. This thing is also very much applicable once we live in a society and we know that how relations they play an important role in order to live in a harmonious society. So similar thing happens in a language, that everything depends upon relations. That means each word interacts with other word, and if that interaction uh, is filtered through syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship, then there is no problem. Saussure has also used one metaphor, and Saussure compares that signified and signified are two sides of a piece of paper. If I ask you to define a piece of paper, then you will say a piece of paper is an object which has two sides. So similarly, a sign has inherently signifier and signified. Signifier is the sound image, and signified is the concept that is associated with that. So that thing is also there once you try to understand syntagmatic and paradigmatic relations. Now, how text is constituted, we have seen that we have individual sounds, phoneme like b here. Then if I simply say b, then you will say what is b. Then we have a larger unit, like when more than one phoneme they combine, then they make morphemes. So in bats we have two morphemes, bat and s. The s or s sound is responsible for the pluralization. Then we have a word like bats. Then we have a phrase where two words they meet each other, so the bats. And we have a clause like, while it is proved the bats harbor viruses. And we have a sentence, it is proved that the bats harbor viruses. The difference between clause and sentence is like, in a clause you have only one verb, and when it comes to sentence you can have more than one finite verb. So you can see like how from minimum we have reached to maximum. And again here it is a very fine knitting. It is a very fine knitting, and how it happens, like one sound interacts with other sound, and you have lots of phonemes, they make a morpheme. You have lots of morphemes, they make a word. You have a word, when more than one word they interact, you make a phrase, you make a clause, you make a sentence. This is how the text is constituted. So this is the fabric of the text, like phoneme, morpheme, word, phrase, clause, sentence. These are actually the these are threads. They are the threads for the fabric. So here we have one sentence, but what will happen when we move beyond a sentence? So there is one example from Halliday and Hassan, and they have used this example in their book Cohesion in English. And what is this example? Wash and core 6 apples, put them in a bowl. Now here there are two very clear separate sentences. They are separated with period, full stop. Here we have. Now when I ask like what does them mean? So this them is an anaphor, it's a pronoun. And when I ask like what does them mean, then you will say them means 6 apples. 6 apples. So 6 apples. This becomes the antecedent for for this anaphor them. Now what is an antecedent? Antecedent is an entity that gives its meaning to other word. So them is in the search of the meaning. Them is in the search of the meaning, so them searches its meaning in the second sentence, put them in a bowl. But the search is not satisfied. Then what them does? Them crosses the boundary, crosses the sentence boundary and reaches to six apple, and six apples very gladly gives its meaning to them, and this entire thing becomes quite meaningful. Wash and core six apples, put them in a bowl. So there is a relationship between antecedent and anaphor. At the same time, this is a sentence of imperative type, because we know that imperative sentence generally they are subjectless. So the you is hidden, but we understand that wash and core six apples, put them in a bowl. So this you is hidden generally, like when we say thank you, then again I is hidden because we want to say I thank you, but generally I is understood because we are saying, so we simply say thank you and we do not use the subject. So similarly, this is an example of an imperative. So this is beyond sentence, and something that is beyond sentence, and how so it's not the case like only in a sentence these association and co-occurrence restrictions they happen. So if I say wash and core six apples, put it in a bowl, you will say put it or put them, because like it's not correct. So again, you need to maintain cohesive relationship. You need to mention this paradigmatic and syntagmatic relationship across sentence boundary as well. So, what we have discussed that etymology, Latin etymology, it comes as a help to us in order to provide the meaning of a text, and we have understood like a text gets its meaning from Latin root texture, which means to weave, and the suggestions are uh, something coherent, integrated collection of sentence that makes actually a text, or that is responsible for textuality. Now, these are different sentences. Like Tolstoy, War and Peace, road sign stop, colorless green ideas sleep furiously, visiting relatives are annoying. So, what do you think about these sentences? Now, let's say you meet me in the morning, and you wish me good morning, and I say War and Peace, or I say Tolstoy, War and Peace. You say what has happened to this person? I am wishing this person good morning, and this person is saying Tolstoy, War and Peace. Whether this person is out of his mind or what? Because you expect that if you have wished me good morning, then you also expect that at least hi, or I smile at you, or I will also wish you good morning to you as well. But I am saying Tolstoy's War and Peace. What does it mean? It becomes meaningful if you consider the situation that you have taken my Tolstoy's text War and Peace for let's say for 1 month, and I've been reminding you that please return my War and Peace, and you are just saying me, okay, I will return tomorrow or in 2 days, or I am finishing it, or I will return it. So you wish me good morning. Then when I say Tolstoy War and Peace, then my reply means that okay, I don't give a damn to your good morning. First return my Tolstoy War and Peace. So that means text is not important, but context is important. Now this thing becomes meaningful in the context. Otherwise, simple text is there is no meaning. So similar case with the road sign stop. Road sign stop is appropriate when you are actually on the road and there is like a road sign stop. Now it's like outside your faculty cabin and there is a sign like stop. Then you will say, what is this? Similar case when Chomsky says colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now this example becomes a perfect example when it is used in a linguistic class where a teacher is teaching meaningfulness, appropriateness with context to language. Similarly, visiting relatives are annoying. Now this is an example of an ambiguous sentence because this sentence has more than one meaning. So visiting relatives, you are visiting them, that act is annoying, or your relatives, they are visiting you, that thing is annoying. The important thing here is you need to take care of the context because without context, text has no meaning. So how come a text transform into discourse? Now we know what is a text and how a text gets meaning. So and we know that text occurs in a context. So, what is context actually? How do you define context? What comes before and after a text is basically context. But it is not only context, not only any context, but knowable context. Knowable context, when knowable, you have a context that is knowable, it transforms text into discourse. And what Bhaktin says, like discourse is the concrete living totality. So when something is said like Tolstoy War and Peace, then you think about all the permutation and combinations that are related to, associated to with your language experience, and you try to think that why that person had said this thing. You try to combine all the context, knowable context, unknowable context, and that's why, and because of that particular reason, text transforms into discourse. So you have a knowable context, and that makes text discourse. Now, can a text be decontextualized? Now, this is again an important question that we can raise. The boy's name was Santiago. I hope that all of you must have read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's a very good book, and you can read it in one go. That type of language is used in this book. And here, this is the first sentence of this book. The boy's name was Santiago. Now, this sentence actually occurs in this text. But what I have done here, deliberately, purposefully, uh, I have extracted that particular sentence from this book and I have used it here. Now, this act is known as decontextualization. But it doesn't mean that decontextualization has no meaning. Decontextualization is also very meaningful. Why is it so? Because here I have used it for a purpose. And once you conduct a research, once you write a paper, what do you actually do? You are always engaged in the process of decontextualization. You put citations, you quote someone, and what is that? That is again the decontextualization, but a purposeful decontextualization and quite meaningful. Because once you quote or once you cite something either in your research or in your research paper, then it is quite very meaningful and it is contextualized. So, yes, text can be contextualized, there is no problem in that. Now, there is one literary critic, that is Stanley Fish, and again he raised one important question. Um, that is there a text in this class? Basically, this is an anecdote, and what happened, that once a student uh, reached Stanley Fish and posed this question: is there a text in this class? And we know what is the general meaning of a text. General meaning of a text is reading material. So Stanley Fish understood this, that the candidate is asking about the reading material. And Stanley Fish started providing the names of or titles of the book. That okay, one, two, three, these books we are dealing with this semester. But this was the student corrected. Stanley Fish said, no, 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 no. I'm interested in, is there a text in this class? And the student wanted to ask, is there a theoretical viewpoint? That whatever the text we read, is there a theoretical viewpoint through which we are reading that particular text? So we have a theoretical viewpoints like structuralism, post-structuralism, Marxism, feminism. So that was basically the question. Now, if you take, is there a text in this class? It's a linguistic utterance. It's simply an utterance, and it is open to many interpretations. So, is there a text in this class? And how can some interpretations becomes valid and not all the interpretation? So, we know that is there a text in this class can be either the student is asking about the theoretical viewpoint or the student is asking about the reading material. But it should not be the case that is there a text in this class means uh, is there only one professor in this class? Like this is not the meaning. So all interpretations are not valid, but certain interpretations are valid. Now, who is in the authority to determine that which interpretations are valid and which interpretations are not valid? So, Stanley Fish, he gave a term that is known as interpretive communities. So, generally, in literature, the audience, they constitute this interpretive communities and they decide like, okay, these interpretations are valid. So it's not the case that they are meeting they are meeting in a conference or they are meeting separately, and then they are deciding, okay, these 100 meanings are valid and this 101 meaning is not valid. It's not the case. It's like the same wavelength that we have, that is associated with us, that is associated with meaningfulness, that we have with language, and that decides which thing is meaningful and which thing is not. So it is interpretive communities rather than either the text or reader that produce meaning. And again, like if you want to paraphrase this thing, then at one place, Ronald Bass says the author is dead. So this intentional and affective fallacy as well. So all these things indicated to interpretations and to interpretive communities as well. So, Fish states that the meanings are already conditioned by the situation in which it was uttered. So, whether you use a language, then the situation is important. And here the situation means knowable context, and knowable context transform text into discourse. So, similarly, in a similar vein, Wittgenstein also said that the meaning of a word is its use in the language in philosophical investigation. So, what is important? Usage is more important than the word. So there are words in the dictionary. All the words that are spoken in the English language that are in the dictionary. But that is not important. You need to know how to combine those words, how to use those words in meaningful context. Otherwise, dictionary has no meaning as such. Dictionary can't communicate. So it is also suggested in English language teaching classes that don't learn vocabulary in isolation, because there is no meaning in that. If you learn this word has this meaning, this word has this meaning, and even if you learn the entire dictionary and the meaning of those words, then what is the use if you can't use in real life situation? So again, like Wittgenstein focuses on the same thing in philosophical investigations. The meaning of a word is its use in the language. But what protects us against the indeterminacy of signifiers? Now signifiers like bank. So a bank has more than one meaning. If I say I'm going to the bank, assuming a situation that I live in a place where there is a financial institution, because one meaning of bank is financial institution and another meaning of bank is a river bank. Assuming that I am living near a river bank and there is also a bank, and if I say this thing that okay, I am going to the bank, that indeterminacy of signifier, because bank means both both bank, river bank as well as the financial institution. So what protects us against the indeterminacy of signifiers? So we have this ability of common meaning. We have this contextual setting that we have dependent is responsible for the meaningfulness. So again, the thing is like uh, you always have this indeterminacy of signifiers, but again you reach to the common meaning first and then the uncommon meaning. So generally in a literary interpretations, once we reach to a very common meaning, and then we try to meet the less common meanings. So this is generally how we get new interpretations each day. So we discussed that context precedes sentence. So whatever we said, there is already a context, because this is not the first time you are saying this. This has been said since ages. So it is not the case that there is no context and you said something very out of the blue. Even if I say like today I saw a dinosaur in my garage, then this is also you. If I say this thing, then you know that he is talking about not the actual dinosaur, but he is talking about let's say a toy dinosaur or a picture of dinosaur, or let's say a collage of dinosaur. So that type of thing is there. So again, context precedes the sentence, and because of that thing, we determine the meaningfulness. So we will fall back to context in which we are accustomed to hear such utterances. So decontextualized text does not mean anything but matching to a context. So So the bottom line is understanding requires situational competence. So what's more important? Linguistic competence is not that important, but the situational competence becomes more important because situational competence is associated with context. And when we compare lingual competence with situation competence, then we know that lingual competence is narrow, but situational competence is broad. When I say lingual competence is narrow, I mean that any linguistic utterance is to be said uh, in innumerable situations. So it's not like one-to-one match that that if I said John loves Mary, then actually some person John is standing in front of me, and there is also some person Mary is standing in front of me, and now they love each other. So I say John loves Mary. I can also use John loves Mary if I want to teach subject verb object in a grammatical class. So I can say like John is a subject and Mary is an object and love is a transitive verb. So that is situation competence is broad, but lingual competence is narrow. At the same time, we need to understand that words themselves do not determine the meaning. As I said, like words are available in the dictionary, but if you do not know how to use them, then there is no meaning. But rather the context, the discourse in which they take part. So we have one concept like interpretive communities, and we say like generally we move to common from we move to uncommon from common interpretation. So generally when we read a piece of work, we try to find out very common interpretation. We try those associations which are very common to all, generally all the readers, they do this. But when we read somewhat out of the blue interpretation, many people complain that okay, I find reading Derrida, I find Bloom, or even like I find reading Fish difficult. Why is it so? Because the way that they write and the way they try to convey is not common. It is uncommon. So then we question that okay, they are not writing something common and they are writing something uncommon. So whether their interpretation is valid or not, or what they are saying is valid or not. So M.H. Abrams talks about uh, um, such interpreters, and M.H. Abrams uses the term stubborn interpreters. So Derrida, Bloom, and even Fish, what they are stubborn interpreters. They impose their meaning on us. So we have one literal and normative meaning that we are aware of, but they are not giving us that literal and normative meaning. They are giving us meaning. They are just imposing their own meaning on us. So it is a chance that your writing career will be a chaos or failure if you impose, and there is also a possibility that you become an instant hit. So similar case we have like Bloom and we have Derrida and the Fish. Now they are the icon that we have. So why? Because they are stubborn interpreters. So risk is always there, and they took this risk and they imposed their meaning on us. And now we are trying to understand what's there in their book. Now, here we have discussed the concept of text, textuality, what is context, discourse, and how an interpretation comes into being. Now I will tell you like how you can take a text. Let's say we will conduct a textual analysis here. Now this is one hymn. Almighty God, our heavenly Father, who of thy tender mercy didst give thine only Son Jesus Christ to suffer death upon the cross for our redemption. Now very few words, like less than 20 words are used in this short hymn. Once you look at this, and if I say like analyze this, interpret this, what is your interpretation? Your interpretation will be God gives his only son Jesus to save human beings and he died for us. You will say like this. But do you think a student of literature will write only like this? No. This is not suffice. This is not the way a literary student, a literary scholar should take or treat a text. And or at surface level you can also guess that okay, this is a text of liturgical prayer, religious English is used, and it is used in church service. This information you will provide, but again, this information is not enough. This information is not the way you should treat a text. That means surface level is not important. You need to delve deep, you need to go down deep. So once you go down deep, then you will find Almighty God is an example of vocative case. And who is a relative pronoun here? And who here is a substitution of Almighty God. So this is vocative case. It is a grammatical information. You may raise the question like how this grammatical information is important for us. Almighty God is in a vocative case. And when can you use a vocative case? When there is no a mediator between you. So here the author is directly communicating with the God, Almighty God, and it is a sign that when we are praying to God, we do not require a mediator, a middleman. So it's not only a grammatical information, but a very important information that you have. At the same time, who of thy tender mercy? No, we do not use English like this, who of thy tender mercy. This word order is quite inappropriate. If we want to say uh, this thing in modern day English, then we will say tender mercy of whom? Or whose tender mercy? That we will say. So what the writer has done, because it's an example of him and him also falls under the poetry, then we can say inverse word order. So generally in poems you have this inverse word order, and that is very purposefully used by the writers, starting from let's say Chaucer to let's say Carlos Williams Carlos. Fine. So it's not like only one writer is using that, but throughout the literary tradition, we have writers, they have inverse the word order in order to make it more appealing. Once you look at the father and son, like father and son, and if you raise the question that why father is capital F and son is capital S, one logic will be like because is the first word of this line, and generally in writing poetry we use the first letter of the first word capital in a poem. But at the same time, here is different purpose, because here the writer is not talking about the biological relationship between father and son. Writer is talking about the spiritual relationship between father, that means Almighty, and the son here is the Jesus Christ. So that thing also important, and here we have this example of caps lock. Now, when we focus on the words like this, thy, thine, then we see that these words are not the common words, because nowadays we don't use these words. We use like did or die means you, your. So we can say that these are archaic words. But if these are archaic words, then what is for you in the literary or textual analysis? It shows that this poem is written 100, 200, 300 years back. It is not like written by any poet recently. So it also shows that a literary tradition that you have of a particular religion or that particular hymn. Then you have a suffer, death, cross, and redemption. Now, these are the examples of collocations that you have. Collocations are what? Which are associated with each other. So, suffer, death, cross, redemption, we know that how these words are associated. So, generally in a poem, you find that many collocations, that words uh, which have similar associations, they are used quite often. So once you go deep, then you find that okay, these things are also there in this poem. And at surface level you are only able to find out God gives his only son Jesus to save human beings as he died for us. So that means you need to read something critically. And what is the meaning of critical reading? The meaning of critical reading is you must read something carefully and closely. So close and careful means critical. So how we are able to get many meanings? We are able to get many meanings when we started reading critically, when we started paying more attention to each and every word that is used. And if even if this information is with you, then you can write these 5 6 sentences in place of only one. And what you can write, the text begins with a vocative expression that directly addresses God, by which the connection between the addressee and addressed is well established. Also, the inversion of syntax topicalize God, who of thy tender mercy. And we know like who here is God. But this time it is substituted by a relative pronoun who. The archaic use of the past tense auxiliary did establishes its link, indicating that the prayer is quite ancient. and has been used by the ancestors as well. So there is a connection between you and your ancestors as well. The capitalization is an example of capitonym, which removes it from the biological relation and establishes heavenly correction. The use of thy and thine is also in line with the Old English, but it has also an alliterative function. The collocation is well suited for the religious purpose. So now you can see, even simply paying close attention to a text, how you can find the textuality, how you can find more meaningfulness, how this entire poem becomes a discourse for you. Now, when we talk about text, textuality, discourse, then these two terms are also important because they are also related. One term is intertextuality, another term is intersubjectivity. Now, this term intertextuality is coined by Julia Kristeva. The term synthesizes with Ferdinand Saussure semiotics, is a study of how science derives their meaning with the structure of a text. Inter means between, and text, you know, you need to go from one text to another text. So the meaning of intertextuality is, once you are reading a text, then your personal literary reading habit, your personal literary tradition is also comes into play if you want to interpret or find meaningfulness in a text. Because something is said is not the first time a writer is saying that thing. It has been said in other words, in other context, in different texts as well. And if you are well read, then you can find out the multiple layers of meaning which are associated with that particular text. For example, there is a word like uh, Shruprankha in Ramayana. Now, when I say Shruprankha in Ramayana, the sister of Ravan, what do you understand? Okay, there is a name Shruprankha, that is fine, and the sister of, and it's some mythology, and forget about it. But when I say that it has some English connection as well, you will be surprised. You will be very much attentive. Okay, how can Shupranka has an English connection? Then I say, what is the first syllable in Shupranka? You will say Shrup, and I say, like, can you associate Shrup with any other English word? You will say sharp. That means Shrup and sharp, they are related. There is a possibility that English people, they have borrowed Shrup, sharp from Shrup. So, what is the meaning of Shupranka? Someone who has sharp nails. That person can be called Shupranka. Particularly in context to Ramayana. But again, so again, like, what is this? What am I doing actually when I'm associating Shupranka with English language, with etymology, with shroop and sharp? This is one example of intertextuality. Because I have this knowledge of the words, that how words are associated with each other, then I can tell you a beautiful tell, and you will understand, oh, shroop and sharp, and you will never forget that, okay, shroop and sharp, they are how associated they are. So this is the thing. This is the thing that Julia Kristeva talks about intertextuality. In line with Julia Kristeva, we have also one term used by Bakhtin, that is dialogism. And what is dialogism? We suggest a continual dialogue with other works of literature and other authors, and further examines multiple meanings or heteroglossia. Hetero means different, glossia means meaning. So again, like, why do we read a text? We read a text because we want to find out the multiple layers of meaning. And when we try to find out the multiple layers of meaning, then we feel enthralled. We feel very excited. So this is basically the purpose, like intertextuality. Intertextuality replaces intersubjectivity because the author is dead. So it's not the case like your subjectivity, your meaningfulness is important, other person's meaningfulness is important. It's not the case. Intertextuality is more important. Intersubjectivity must not be given that importance. So meaning is not transferred directly from writer to reader, but instead it is mediated through or filtered by codes. So it's not the case, okay, writer has said this thing, and what the writer has said this thing, I have understood it perfectly. This intersubjectivity is not required at all. Once you are reading a literary text seriously, you require intertextuality, because intertextuality gives you multiple layers of meaning. So writer is not important, reader is also not important. What is that is mediated through is more important. Then we have what's another concept like hypertextuality as well. Don't confuse hypertextuality with hyperreality, because hyperreality is a term used by Baudrillard, and hyperreality is like a copy of a copy, and the original is lost. We are not talking about that. We are talking about hypertextuality. So post-structuralist re-examines intertextuality as a production within text. Fine. So production within text, like we have thousands of books, and how these books are text are interrelated to each other. But what is hypertext? So hypertext is a text which alludes, derives from, or relates to an earlier work or hypertext. So particularly, we have this concept hypertextuality, and it is related to computer display. Now we have an application like Maxter, and in Maxter, it's an Android application. Also, you will find on iPhone as well. So you have thousands of magazines in Maxter, and sometimes it so happens that once you click a magazine, then compulsorily there is one video. So you can't avoid that video. The 10-second video is there, particularly India Today. If you open India Today, then there is a video. So what is this? This is imposed hypertextuality, that okay, you need to read the India Today, then 10 minutes, that cartoon video you must see first. That's not good, because again, like it's like an obstruction, or it's like an imprisonment for the reader, because reader's free will. So hypertextuality is basically a text displayed on a computer display or another electronic devices with reference hyperlinks to other text that the reader can immediately access. So we have a PDF file and certain links are quite active, and we click them, then we reach to another page number, and where there is a description or relatedness related to that term. And there is also one concept like meta text that we have. So meta text is a text that is on writing. So a meta text is a writing that reflects on writing. That is one another meaning that we have. So why I have discussed these things, because these things are also associated with text, and you should have a clear understanding of what is text, context, textuality, interpretation, and discourse. So that's why, incidentally, I have discussed these things, which I find quite related to the term, the thing that I have discussed. Now, there is one popular saying by nothing outside the text. It is said by Jacques Derrida in 1976 in his book of Grammatology. Now, many people, they have this misinterpretation of this saying that nothing outside the text, that means everything in the text. Now, this is not the meaning that everything is the text. The meaning is again focusing on the intertextuality, that if you want to try to find out the meaning that is there in the text, you can't find out that meaning outside the word. You need to refer to other text. So that means again a literary tradition is emphasized and focused that the meaning of a meaning that is there in the text cannot be found in the word that is outside the text. So you need to, from one text to another text, another text to another text. It's an endless process. And because why it is an endless process? Because Derrida says the text is a text of another text. Text is a text of another text. That means there is nothing outside the text, and it's an endless process as well. So don't misinterpret this. Nothing outside the text means like everything is in this one book only. It's not the case. Everything is not only inside the one book, but you need to go for one book to thousands of other books in order to understand the real meaning that is associated in a book, in a text. So thank you all. This is my presentation on text, textuality, and discourse, and I stop here. And if you have any doubt and questions, then you can raise your questions. I'll be happy to answer it. And yes, over to you. You can also write your questions in the chat box.
Wonderful session, Professor. Thank you. I personally enjoyed it a lot. Now, over to the participants for the questions. Yes.
Dear participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you can type in the question in the chat box.
Professor, there is a question from Mr. Vel Murugan. It's on the chat box. I'm just reading it for you.
Okay.
Will activities like reading comprehension for students be only the assessment of reading the text or comprehending the meaning alone? That is his question. It's on the chat box too.
Yeah. Like to answer this question, because this question is related to language teaching and language learning as well. So there are four skills that are emphasized, and what are those four skills? Like LSRW: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So when it comes to reading alone and you consider these things in isolation, then there is no meaning at all. Because all these activities, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they go hand in hand. So even like when we put aside this listening and speaking, because reading is a different type of act than listening, and writing is another type of act than listening or speaking. Then you need to keep in mind that once you read a book, whether you are doing justice with reading or not. Now, what do I mean when I say whether you are doing justice to reading or not? You need to cross question that once I read something, whether I am utilizing the margin of the books or not. You need to cross question that why this top margin, why this bottom margin, why this left margin, why this right margin is given. This right margin, left margin is not given for the decorative purpose. It is given that you must communicate with the text. How can you communicate with the text? When you use your pencil, you underline certain words, you associate that words with other texts that you have read, you have another associations. What Bakhtin says, that lived totality, the concrete living totality. So once you read something, you need to use the concrete living totality in order to convert that text into discourse. And if you are not writing anything in the margin on top or bottom, or if you are a very savvy book lover, that okay, I don't want to dirty my book, so use some other paper. And if you are not doing that, that means you are first of all not doing justice with your reading, because everything has multiple layers of meaning. Everything has multiple layers of meaning. So first thing is, if you want that whatever you read will be completely understandable to me, or I comprehend it perfectly, then first thing you need to change your reading habit. First thing, you need to engage with the text. You need to have a communication with the text. You need to have a communication with the absent writer. That is one thing. So this is basically this reading, and this reading will convert into reading comprehension. And assessment of reading the text and the comprehending the meaning alone. Assessment is a different activity, because assessment of reading uh, will be will be done by third party, like someone who is conducting your examination, and the person is asking certain questions which are directly related to the text, and certain questions which are implied or inferred. So assessment, you can't assess yourself, third person can assess whether you have a comprehension or not. So a couple of things, because you have mixed these things, so I have tried to clarify that these things are also there. So what's your last question? That was like second question. Will activity like reading comprehension for students be only the assessment of reading the text or the comprehending the meaning alone? So it's not the other thing, because two other terms are associated with your question is of competence and performance. There is a possibility that you are very competent person, but in the examination, because of certain reason, because of the memory loss during that particular time, you can't perform, but you know actually. So these things are associated with this, but we do not have any other system of assessment. Performance is only the system of assessment. If you can't perform, then you are considered incompetent, but that should not be the case. But presently we do not have any better way to do that. So I think like my answer is somewhat meaningful to you. So comprehending the meaning alone, yeah, meaning is not alone, but the main meaning. Otherwise, the associations, layers of meaning, they are also associated. There is one other question by Sri Ram. How can we enrich students' vocabulary, sir? Context. In context, if you teach anything, then it will go in the deep memory. We have the surface memory and deep memory. In surface memory, we have only 10 seconds of things. They remain only for 10 seconds and then they evaporates, then they go. So once you make a meaningful context, then obviously you have a great association. For example, there is a word like lubha, and and you have a word like love. Lubha is a Sanskrit word, and the meaning of lubha means to desire. So if you teach like how love and lubha they are associated with each other, they will not forget. Similarly, there is an English word like vodka. Vodka has been derived from Sanskrit udaka. And what is the meaning of udaka? Udaka means water. Udaka, vodka. Similar. Udaka means water. Water is also colorless. Fine. Water is so vodka is a drink that is like water. That's why it is vodka, udaka. So this type of context. These are just examples I am giving because I know many things related to etymology. That's why I'm taking help of etymology. But any other story you can create, any other context you can create, and when it's a meaningful context, knowable context, then definitely students will learn. And you said because students showing less interest in learning the new words and practice it in the real life situation. If it is really in a real life situation, then students will definitely enjoy. If it is not in real life situation, no one will enjoy. So once you are teaching vocabulary, once you are teaching new words, then don't sit in the class and walk outside in a garden in a way and you try to make it an inact activity. You try to use some histrionics, some dramatics into the class in order to make students understand the particular word that I want to say.
Thank you, Professor. I have a question for you. This is actually, there in my mind. I thought you'll be the right person, give to throw some light on this question. Usually, Professor, we have a kind of an understanding that deconstruction is actually a negative operation, and it is something which is linked with the distraction. Actually, there are many people who tend to think that deconstruction is not actually essential. As a literary person, what is your opinions about it, Professor? Is deconstruction actually required, or are we it is a two-way road? Okay, there are people who think that it's required and those who think that it's actually something which is decomposing. But according to me, I really don't feel that, because deconstruction is something that which is rather, it just dismantles cultural philosophy, philosophical institutional structures. So what is your take on this, Professor? This is my
Uh,
question. Yes.
in what context you are using the term construction?
Professor? Yes, Professor.
In what context you are using the term construction?
For a text, I mean.
Okay, okay. So what I have understood from your question, because again, like it's not clear to me, like in what way you are using that a text is constructed in that way you are using.
Yes, Professor. Yes. But there are actually, I have learned from my own professors who say that deconstruction is actually not required.
Okay.
Yeah, that
I
is my
got
question.
you. I got
Yes,
you. Because
yes, yes.
when you use the term construction, okay, in Derridian term you are asking that construction and deconstruction. Okay, in that way you are asking.
Yes, definitely, yes.
The first thing that I want to say that don't confuse construction or deconstruction with destruction. That is first thing, because generally we compare construction with the deconstruction with destruction of the text, because this misunderstanding is also there that you are once you are engaged in deconstructing something, then you are engaged in destroying the text. First of all, this is not the case. We need to simply we, we need to simply treat that the act of deconstruction is an act of interpretation, that we need to try to find out the multiple layers of meaning that is associated in the text. When it comes to constructed, or if we try to take this as a metaphorical use, that constructed text or constructed meaning, then somewhat we are limited, because we try to focus on only the meaning that is associated though writer is the originator of that particular text, but once this construction is done, then writer becomes irrelevant. Now you need to deconstruct, you need to find out the multiple layers of meaning. Sometimes there is a possibility that writer is also alive and you have interpreted a text in somewhat altogether different way, and once you meet a writer and once you tell that, okay, I have deconstructed this text in a this manner, writer said, I have not thought about it, and I did not use that text in that way. It hardly matters, because you are writer is not your examiner. After the text is done, after the text is published, now you are free to interpret it. But again, interpretive communities, they play an important role, because there is a poem by William Black, like Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright, and someone interprets that poem that it is a dietary problem, that a person has consumed the meat of a tiger, and because the person has consumed the meat of the tiger, then in the stomach the person is feeling upset, and because of that, the person is writing a poem that tiger, tiger burning bright in my stomach. That type of interpretation is destruction actually. So it has some valid meaning, it has some valid interpretation, then it is meaningful, then it will become destruction. That deconstruction will become a destruction. So you that whatever the interpretation is there, it must pass through interpretive communities, that I want to say.
Yes, Professor. Thank you. I'm getting it. Thank you. There is another question on the chat box.
Okay,
Yes.
there is a question, I can see. Can a text is non-print form be applied to the present analysis? Yes. Nowadays, this virtual text is also a text. So something that has a textuality, that is a text. So hardly matters whether it is a printed, whether it is oral, because generally once we define a text, it can be oral, it can be written. So it's not the case that a text is only in the print form or only the published thing, but it can be of anything. But the important thing with the text is that it must occur in a context. And if it is not occurring in the context, then it will become meaningless. And if it occurs in the context, then it will become meaningful. That I want to say. And there is another question: is there a text in this class by Stanley Fish? Will you please give a short summary, sir, if you wish, what he had want to tell in the book? Again, this particular utterance, it became very famous. Is there a text in this class? And why it became famous? Because Stanley Fish wanted to focus on the multiple layers of meaning, that is heteroglossia, according to Mikhail Bakhtin, and that is like something that is said is not that important, but the situation in which that particular thing is said becomes important. So that's why context and situation, because situation and context, they precede the text, they precede the utterance. That is more important, and that is the essence of Is There a Text in This Class by Stanley Fish. Another question by Milind: can a movie be treated as a text for the present analysis? Anything in this world, a stone can also be treated as a text. Fine, but it must occur in a context. So anything that you can see, perceive, feel like, think about, aliens, zombie, lots of zombie movies are there. We love zombie movies. Why do we love zombie movies? We know that they are not real. Ghost movies, we have a fascination for ghost movies. Why? We know they are not real, but still we love them because they occur in a context. They occur in a context, that's why they become meaningful. If something is not occurring in a context, then it's not a text. It should not be a text.
Thank you, sir. There is another question in the YouTube link that is, don't all writers impose their meaning in a text? So the question
Yeah.
is asked by Professor Devdas.
Okay, this is the question. Yes. Uh, you can treat as an imposition, but you can also treat as their free will to express something. So we have a free will to express ourselves. They have also a free will to express themselves. So you once you read it as an imposition, like they are imposing something on us, when you are very much try to find out what writer wants to say. And if you are away from that thinking that I don't bother what writer wants to say, I am reading it, I am reading it freely. I will try to interpret it freely using all the concepts of intertextuality, heteroglossia. I will do like that. Then there is a possibility that you are also one with the writer, that that one interpretation is also there, and there is a possibility that you come with another interpretation. So it's not the like impose is not a good word, because writer is writing a book and writer is not forcing you to read the book. So impose we can't say, but writer is expressing, and what writer wants to say, we need to understand that, we need to interpret that, and our interpretation can be in line with the writer and can be varied. So this is my answer to that question.
Thank you,
Three more
sir.
questions by Uma Devi, Dr. Uma Devi. Could you please suggest few more reading strategies for undergraduate students in understanding text, textuality, and discourse? Uh, First thing is, once we read a text, once we even read a paragraph, then in a paragraph, the paragraph is also divided into different type of sentences, like where you have the starting sentence and you have this ending sentence, then other sentences there. So you need to cross question, uh, introspect that how one sentence is associated with the other sentence. For example, a paragraph starts with a topic sentence. That particular sentence is a topic sentence. Paragraph ends with the concluding sentence. Generally, topic sentence and concluding sentence, they say the same thing, but they are in the paraphrase, and in between you have sentences which are linked to the topic sentence some way or the other. So once you want to be more structured, like more formal, then you can give an exercise. You can select a you can shortlist a paragraph, you give your students that paragraph, and you ask like, okay, what is the topic sentence? So generally first sentence is the topic sentence. You can ask like whether other sentences in the paragraph, they are associated with the topic sentences. They will say yes. Whether there is a tense change in the sentences, what is the purpose of shifting tenses, whether it is justified, whether it is not justified, what is the concluding sentence, whether concluding sentence is similar to the topic sentence or it is something else. So these type of things, they can make the entire reading more focused, particularly when it comes to undergraduate. So they will read for a purpose, they will read for finding out something, and gradually they will become more interested in the text and the textuality.
there are so many of you thanking you, Professor, for your interest in imparting your knowledge, and various other messages are there in the chat box.
Okay.
Participants, any more questions, please? Yes, Ms. Ba, over to you.
No, ma'am. I try to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a personal question.
Yeah, please.
So, with this digital era, we call it, the people are reading a lot, but comparatively, reading the original text has been reduced. So, in the regular classroom, we could feel that the students prefer to read a paraphrase or a summary than reading a text. Can you give some suggestion for the students, sir? Because we have a lot of undergraduate students here.
Yeah, when it comes to reading and writing, then I have a personal philosophy for these two act. If you want to read something and if you want to write something, then you are self motivated, because all the time no one will be behind you that you must read this thing, you must write this thing. First thing is you must be self motivated, then you can read and write, because there are thousands of things that are available. Second thing is, reading and writing is not an easy activity. It is a disciplined activity and a difficult task. If you are not self disciplined, if you are jumping from, if you can't sit for 5 minutes on your chair, then how can we expect from a person to read a book? A person is moving from one chair, from one place to another place all the time, then you can't read anything, you can't write anything. You are always mobile. You will be with your mobile and always mobile as well. So these are very much disciplined activity. And how to motivate other one thing is, like, we learn by imitation. So like, if we as a teacher, if we sit and we do some serious work, we read, and if the student finds that okay, we are with the book all the time, we are reading or we are writing, then one thing is student will imitate. Another thing is, like, we can give examples, like there is a psychologist, a Swiss psychologist, J Piaget, a Swiss psychologist. So when he was only 11 years old, he published his first scientific paper. So sometimes, like, this type of information also inspires a student. Okay, at the age of 11, people who are at 50, 40, they are not able to write a scientific paper, and he published the first scientific paper at the age of 11. And Einstein called J Piaget a genius um, at some place. So these type of examples, our own examples, examples of other people who are learned, that we can also give. But discipline, self discipline and self motivation is always required in reading and writing.
Rightly said. Rightly said, Professor. I think students here, I think they are listening to it. Yes, and we have a very difficult time in motivating them to read. Actually, so thank you, Professor. It's an excellent session, and thank you very much. Yes, over to you, Ms. Pa.
Thank you, ma'am. Uh, I hope there is no questions from the participants end. And with that, I have come to the conclusion of today's event. First of all, I would like to thank our resource person. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us a wonderful section on text, textuality, and discourse. So I hope till we face this problem, understanding the difference between the text, textuality, and the discourse. That understanding a discourse of a text is really a tough task. So we can easily say discourse, but when you go deep into it, when you try to understand a text, it's a difficulty. But today's session from you is really a helpful one, as we have seen a lot of feedback from the participants. It's a detailed one and a more insightful one. Thank you for giving us this wonderful session, such a very informative session. Thank you, sir, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for sparing your time to be with us. And I would like to extend the thanks to our management for giving us this opportunity to conduct webinars like this, as well as I thank our head of the department. She is the backbone to our department, and she puts a lot of effort to organize a lot of events, seminars, and webinars. Thank you, ma'am. And I also extend my thanks to our faculty team. So, without my colleagues, we cannot make a day possible. Their effort on and off stage is, we cannot no words to thank them. And I also extend my thanks to the students, and a great thanks to all the participants for joining today's session and staying throughout the day. Thank you all. Thank you once again to everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all participants. Thank you the management. Thank you, Dr. Miswa. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, participants. Please stay tuned for tomorrow's session.